ancient voice, whispering from the void, and it chills my lightless heart.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, Dark Phil here. Thank you for tuning in. Here we have another game from mOOnGLaDe, our famous Australian player actually giving the GLHF mate there in true Australian style. Thank you mOOnGLaDe for putting that out there for me. As we said, mOOnGLaDe going to be featured here in a couple of replays that are going to be on the channel. Obviously a few that I've done recently and a couple more that will be coming up soon. We're going to be featuring a lot of mOOnGLaDe and possibly some of the other Australian players, because we have of course mOOnGLaDe being featured in the GSL Code coming up in the end of February, or perhaps at the start of March. I'm not sure. I'll have to check that one up. But this one's a little bit older than what I have normally been casting, but I figure what the hell, this should be a bit of fun. mOOnGLaDe versus EGAxslav on Lost Temple. This one's from a friendly game between these two clans, FXO obviously being one of the biggest Australian clans out there for StarCraft, and of course EG being one of the biggest North American clans. So this should be quite interesting to see. From the openings, of course, at the moment it looks as if mOOnGLaDe is going to be going for standard sort of hatch first, I would assume, for the moment. We will see in just a second if he doesn't get the spawning pool or extractor quite quickly. We will assume that it's a hatchery, but looks as if Axslav will be going for some sort of forge expansion. There it is, bam, he puts it down, and indeed it will be something like that, a drone coming along to try and provide a little bit of harass there. Normally it's the other way around, which is quite hilarious, but as we can see here, in fact, it looks as if mOOnGLaDe will be protecting that ramp. Actually, this is just one thing I want to point out, is that this is from a slightly older replay, meaning that it is slightly older patch. So for those of you thinking, man, mOOnGLaDe, why are you protecting the ramp? It takes 3 pylons now. This is actually post 1.2, so it does actually take 2 pylons in this particular matchup. So it's very responsible, I suppose you could say, of mOOnGLaDe to be protecting the ramp. And as we can see here, Axslav putting the pylon down, which is a great way to stop your opponent from getting the natural hatchery up quite quickly, which is what the Zerg always want to do. And as we can see here, mOOnGLaDe quite quickly responding by getting a spawning pool straight up and running. Now, what we would want to see here from mOOnGLaDe is if he can take this natural, and of course, because his opponent is going to be doing a fast expansion down here at this natural, is you want to see him actually perhaps take a third as well. Now, as you can see here, Axslav with a nice bit of micro, bringing in a secondary probe to try and pick off this drone. It looks like it won't be happening. This cannon's going to warp in just a second and actually kill off this drone if it's not careful, but he does pull it out just in time. Now, this pylon, the Nexus going down right on time there for Axslav. He's going to chuck down a gateway as well to bring up the wall a little bit thicker. As you can see here, the cannon, of course, providing any sort of defense against any Zerglings that might quickly rush out. And as we can see here, mOOnGLaDe actually pulling 4 Zerglings out, which is a nice little amount, just to make sure that any sorts of pressure is diverted or perhaps deflected, and of course making sure that he can gain a little bit of map control. Now, as we can see here, mOOnGLaDe has grabbed both of these Zelnaga watchtowers. He's got this one here, and of course this one here, which will give him a nice bit of vision on Lost Temple, of course. This is quite a pivotal part of Lost Temple currently, is to make sure that you have these Zelnaga watchtowers. Not to mention he's also got this Overlord over here, so he's got a lot of map vision at the moment. Perhaps you'd want to see this Overlord just move slightly up to the north, just to see if he can actually spot what is going on at this expansion. As we can see ourselves, we can see that there is a cyber core going straight up there, so Axslav wasting no time getting to the cybernetics tech. And of course, mOOnGLaDe, as we said, has gotten his natural. It is about to go up, obviously quite a bit delayed given that he did get stopped by that pylon, and so he's going to need to get some economy pumping quite quickly there. But as we said, normally the response from Zerg in this sort of situation is to grab a third base quite quickly. So we will be looking to see if mOOnGLaDe actually responds with that. The other response that you can do as a Zerg is to actually get quite a heap of roaches out and make your Protoss opponent spend a whole crap ton of money building cannons. So because generally, if you're doing this as a Protoss, you want to try not to spend too much on defensive units for the start, because you really want to get this natural up and running quickly, because the whole point of this expansion is to make sure that you get your economy up and running and stay ahead of the Zerg. As we can see here on the economy tab, Axslav doing a great job with his probes, sticking at 32 for the moment, currently staying in tune with mOOnGLaDe for the most part, of course, and his economy will benefit from that as well. So Axslav chucking a few probes into that assimilator, making sure that he's getting off straight away to a great start. Now, one thing again that we will see from mOOnGLaDe is his great creep spread. As you can see here, he actually has a third queen to actually make sure he has enough creep tumors going around the map. It is not uncommon, and a lot of people actually see Hydra and say, wow, Hydra, you have like 50 billion creep tumors running around the map, providing all sorts of creep everywhere and all that sort of junk. mOOnGLaDe does exactly the same thing, and to some extent does a really good job of it as well. So we will see mOOnGLaDe chucking up. I would not be surprised if we get 4, maybe 5 creep tumors running around the map, putting creep everywhere, denying Protoss building pylons anywhere he wants to, also giving a lot of map vision, of course, as well. So we actually see a Zealot come across here to this Zelnaga watchtower, picking off the Zerg that was controlling it. Nice little move here by Axslav to make sure he has he's either denying or controlling the Zelnaga watchtowers himself. Of course, as we see here, this Zealot will do this, will cut up that Zergling there like he was at a butcher's, and of course, as we mentioned there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 creep tumors out already for mOOnGLaDe. So this queen doing her job quite nicely, pooping out a few creep tumors to make sure that they're going around the map. And now, as we can see, the build from our Protoss player here will be going for +1 weapons quite quickly. Here he does have a Twilight Council, getting that blink pretty quickly there. He's probably going to see something with something with Void Rays. I haven't actually seen anything like this before. Bear in mind, this is actually before patch 1.2, as I said before. So Void Rays, I think, what was it? They got buffed or they got nerfed? I can't remember. I think it was nerfed. I'm not really sure. But 2 Void Rays are out for Axslav. He's going to run around the map, provide a little bit of pressure on the overlords that are hanging around the map. So looks as if we're going to need to be really careful for mOOnGLaDe here. He's going to need to have, he does have Hydras out already, so he's going to need to use these quite effectively here, making sure that he doesn't run into the Void Rays when they're full charged, of course, because the Void Rays will eat up Hydras when they're full charged, depending on the amount that are out, and we will see what happens there. mOOnGLaDe going to need to inject, and he does do so quite dutifully, and he does have groove spines out for those Hydras, so they are going to be grooving along to some tunes, and in fact he's going to be moving out here with some spine crawlers. This is very cool to see. Now, what I'm interested in is if this clump of overlords, that'll probably be actually just a counter to the Void Rays, to make sure that the Void Rays can't just randomly pick off overlords, but also I want to see if there are going to be any drops from mOOnGLaDe. What a response you can do to a Protoss who is fast expanded like this is to, as we said before, you've got expanding to get a third quite quickly, you've got using roaches to try and force a lot of cannons, make a lot of the money being spent on the cannons instead of units, and of course the third option, of course, is to try and send a Niter Swarm or a drop straight into the main base. Now, as you can see here, Axslav coming in the back to this gold expansion base, whilst he is pressuring at the front. A couple of these stalkers are going to easily pick off that queen that was sitting there. Some beautiful blink micro here from Axslav, so the roaches are going to try and argue their point of the matter on this particular battle, but it looks as if the Hydras were able to just fend off those Void Rays. It looks as if the Void Rays actually died, so not the greatest micro there from Axslav, but the job was complete. He did force the loss of a queen and a couple of roaches from mOOnGLaDe. If you have a quick look here, I was actually about to say Axslav actually blocked in his base, so he's going to need to blow up something here, and indeed he does. Picks off the gateway here. Now that the stalkers have done what they can, he's probably going to move in to do a little bit more stalker harass. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that happening there. And we do have mOOnGLaDe running in here with an Overseer, maybe going to drop down some Contaminate, and indeed he does, putting down the Contaminate on the, what building was that? That was a robotics bay, delaying the research of the extended thermal lance, which is going to really provide mOOnGLaDe with some time to get out some units that count the Colossi, which no doubt will be popping out quite shortly from Axslav. And as we can see here, in fact, there was actually one already here in the queue for the robotics base. So we're going to see probably Colossus and probably gateway, standard sort of gateway units, I would assume, from Axslav, dropping off a probe with this paper plane. The paper plane now flying across through the third base, which is effectively going to be up quite shortly. You would assume a few cannons will be up there as well at this third base for Axslav as well. There we go, one, perhaps a couple more will go down in a second. No, but the probe is going to do a dance first. Meanwhile, down here, the Stalkers are going to have vision of this high ground with the Phoenix. They're going to be able to walk straight up there. The Phoenix actually providing a little bit of assistance, but the Stalkers are going to chew away straight up at these Overlords. They do have speed, and Roaches and Hydras are going to come straight in here, providing some defense, but it looks as if the Stalkers, sorry, have done a great job of picking off some of those Overlords there of mOOnGLaDe's units, and as we can see, mOOnGLaDe is actually in the red for the moment, so this is just a little bit of distraction, just a little bit of harass just off the side of mOOnGLaDe's base to make sure that he is staying on his toes and is not just sitting back macroing up. That is one thing which a lot of the players in GSL Code A are going to have to be careful of. If you let mOOnGLaDe macro up, he is going to stomp all over your head, you know, and he's going to absolutely rule the game and rule the whole series, I would suspect. If you let him macro up, you're going to need to make sure you are in contention in a macro scale, and or either perhaps making sure you harass as well. So as you can see there, Axslav doing a good job of that, providing some Stalker harass, meanwhile getting his third base up and running. As we can see here, great probe transfer from the main and the natural, and of course this fourth base on the island is going to go up quite soon as well. So we'll see what mOOnGLaDe's response to this is. He does of course have his gold, which kind of counters the expansions there from Axslav until they get fully up and running. As we can see, mOOnGLaDe currently sitting on around about 2k income with about 700 gas. Some Stalkers coming across here to try and put some harass down on the fourth expansion from mOOnGLaDe. The Corruptors coming in, going to need to be a bit more careful with those Corruptors perhaps, because they are going to be essential quite soon once the Colossus start coming out in numbers, and indeed they will, I would assume. But the great little corralling there from mOOnGLaDe, putting some Roaches and Hydras down on the low ground. Meanwhile, the rest of the forces come in here to the main position, and these Stalkers are going to go down. Quite an unfortunate loss there for Axslav, but nonetheless, he did do a little bit of damage. So a little bit more harass, as we said, from Axslav, just providing a little bit more, making sure that he's being very careful and keeping mOOnGLaDe on his toes. And as we can see, he's doing a great job with his upgrades as well. +3 is already done for these Colossus, so they are going to be doing an absolute ton of damage. And as we can see here, mOOnGLaDe has decided to come in here. He's going to chuck down a changeling just to see what is happening up in the front base. Hey guys, I just left my keys up here in the main base. I'm just coming back, just going to head out and cruise some chicks. Let me just see what's happening here. And as we can see, mOOnGLaDe actually sees that there are 4 Colossus already out. Meanwhile, up here at the third expansion for Axslav, he's actually going to lose this one straight away there. A whole heap of DPS from the Hydras and the Roaches there. Of course, he wants to be really careful, make sure he doesn't actually lose these units, because if he gets caught out of position here, he could actually get sandwiched straight in, and it'll become a bit of a bottleneck, quite like in 300 or something like that. But the probes have survived. They've come up here and had a little party up here in this corner base there, and they're doing a little dance. They've got some groovy music going on. Speaking of groove, these Hydras are going to come across here, and they're going to provide a lot of damage. There are a lot of Roaches, I mean, actually, to provide some meat shield against these cannons. The Corruptors coming across to smash away at those Colossus, and indeed they do. There were 4 Colossus there, guys, so keep that in mind. So the Colossus have been absolutely smashed down straight away there by mOOnGLaDe. He's just going to run straight in here to the natural, is going to pick off that Nexus, going to pick off a lot of these probes as well. And as we can see here, that +3 that Axslav actually had is really going to do nothing against this sort of force here, with mOOnGLaDe doing a great job with those Corruptors, picking off those Colossi straight away with no sort of response from Axslav. It looks as if he was kind of a little bit unprepared perhaps for that attack. Storm's finally going down. Storm is quite powerful against Hydras, of course, but it depends how many Storms you actually have, not to mention the fact that Storm does not do too much against Roaches on the first couple of Storms. But it looks as if this is going to be all over Red Rover for Axslav. He's going to be going down to mOOnGLaDe in quite epic fashion. As we said, kind of in a way did some great harass, but it looks as if it was just not enough to actually keep mOOnGLaDe off his macro beauty, which he does have. He's got a whole heap of macro skill. The guys in Code A will need to be very careful of that. And as you can see here, the half of this base is actually just being decimated by mOOnGLaDe there, and not to mention he's still got reinforcements still piling out of his base here. We do have 34 roaches on the way. We've got some of them coming out here. We've got a few coming from the gold expansion, not to mention a few from the main and the natural. So there are going to be a whole heap of roaches popping out here shortly, not to mention these burrowed ones here at the expansion. He's also got burrowed move on the way for these roaches, so these guys are going to be able to burrow and then run away. And there we go, the GG from Axslav. A great game there from mOOnGLaDe, picking up the win there with some great macro, picking up the win, not to mention, of course, with his, despite the harass from Axslav, doing some nice stalker harass, but I think it just wasn't just enough. So it'll be interesting to see how mOOnGLaDe goes against some of these other the Protoss opponents in Code A. So hope you guys like that one. Make sure you jump on the link down below in the description, linking you to the mOOnGLaDe fan club on teamliquid.net. Show your support for mOOnGLaDe and jump on Twitter. It's mOOnGLaDe AU. Send him a hello, send him a good luck with GSL, that sort of thing. Make sure you're showing your support, because we're going to see how far he can go, see how many Koreans and foreigners he can smash through, and hopefully it will be a fun old time over in Koreatown. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure you stay tuned. We're going to have some more mOOnGLaDe and other Australian players coming up soon. Thank you very much. Cheers.